Hey guys, it's Melissa here from melissaoatman.com. Welcome to Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness, a daily podcast devoted to spirituality and self-help. If you're new, I want to welcome you. If you're returning, welcome back. So today we have a very interesting guest with us. We have Miss Laura Stevens with us, and she has just written a new book. And we have been discussing this book before we got on here to record the podcast. And I'm very excited for her to share all about this book with you. So I want to welcome you here today, Laura.
Hi, thank you. Wonderful to be here.
So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your background, because you are a journalist, which I find also extremely fascinating. So just tell us a little bit about your background and then how you came to write this book and what the book is all about.
Absolutely. Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So I have been a journalist since 18 at school, University of Georgia, working for the newspaper and the BBC and interning and working full time for a newspaper while in school. And I think it was just my way of really researching because I was so shy. I wanted to interview. I was in charge of legal and interviewing all the sort of judges that came in. And I really wanted to investigate some things that had happened in high school, including some murders and some shootings and some other things that had happened that I really didn't have the tools to sort of deal with. So I was interviewing experts on these topics, and that got me a job right away, even before I graduated. I never even walked. I was in Maine working, and I had been in London working. So I was kind of a busy bee at a young age. And that may look successful from the outside, but that's what ultimately led me towards the path of yoga, slowing down, if you know what I mean. So all I can say is I worked at newspapers, magazines. I wrote a book, went to grad school in New York, then got married, and we moved to London, and I was working for a magazine there. And pregnant with baby number 2, and I moved to California for a specialist. I needed a specialist. And then just, life got really lifey. And it was a hard journey. And now I can look back on it with gratitude because I had sort of stepped away from my fiction. I had really stepped away from living a more centered, holistic kind of life grounded in gratitude. I wasn't there anymore. But my husband left. He went back to England. So I was in California with 2 children, a 7-year-old and like an 8-month-old. And I decided to stay. And I went on this path. And my mom, she got early onset Alzheimer's and died sadly. And so these years, just so many things happened at once, like the rug being pulled out from under me. And I think sometimes these things can be blessings if we allow them, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast before. And so from there, I started going to yoga. And, I had started a little bit of yoga when I was in London because my back kept going out, wanting to, and it sort of got me in the back door. In the South, like people will say, well, whatever gets them to church, like, and it was kind of, that was the way it was for me, And so I went back to yoga, and then I kept going through more and more trainings and ended up teaching. And what was interesting is that even though I was taking care of 2 kids solo, my ex is a good dad, but he's in Europe, so he would see them 3 weeks a year. So it was like full on. I still had the time to dip into my fiction. Isn't that interesting? Because I let go of fear. And I think deep breathing, yoga, probably, you can find your own outlet, whatever that is. Some people do it with running, that's fine. But for me, just opening up all the channels, getting into the chakra alignment, breathing deeply, forgiving myself, forgiving others, all of this allowed me to get to that place where in my mind, I could go back to my fiction, right? And that I have something to say. It's not too late, not too old. These things are fear that, especially in America, we have these goals we think we need to achieve at certain ages and outside voices get in our heads, right? And so I just kept writing on my own. So this novel, which is under my maiden name, Laura Roe, um, Between Thoughts of You, will be out in January. And I'm very excited. It's actually my third novel. The other two will probably get published after. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And three is my number. So, and so I'm like, I'm okay with it. And it was really inspired by quite a lot of different things in my life, although obviously it's so fictional. I did spend um, 2 summers. I spent a lot of time in Tuscany. I've been to Italy many times, so there was that inspiration. I've been to Hawaii many times, so there's that inspiration for my main character. But I really wanted to get into, when my mom was dying of Alzheimer's and she lost her memory, I really wanted to get into that place of how, we all sometimes die in many ways. We leave a part of ourselves behind, which I know I certainly had a rebirth after my divorce and everything. And the parts of ourselves die as we embrace other things. And I think we have to get there with forgiveness. So this book is really a lot about what is love and what is forgiveness and how does that look. So that's a lot more information than you asked for.
I love that, though. I love that you, even though it's all fiction, you've taken aspects of your own life and built them into these characters and into the storyline, and that you have written about something that affects every single person on the planet. My belief is that we come here to experience different forms of love, and that includes forgiveness. And I think there are so many people out there who have trouble forgiving people, but also, more importantly, forgiving themselves for their shortcomings or the mistakes they think that they've made. So tell us a little bit more about how your book and the characters, and how did you incorporate this idea of forgiveness?
Well, I mean, forgiveness is like a daily practice on many levels, but really it comes to acceptance, right? And letting go of perfectionism. So in so many ways, I think all of us grapple with that. Like, the perfectionists in my lives don't forgive themselves for making mistakes, even though they're the first to forgive others. There's all these different personality types, and I can relate to all of them. But so I absolutely am madly in love with my main character, Lulu. Like, I wish I was her. And what's funny is a lot of my beta readers, because I sent it out to get, just to get some feedback. And a lot of it was so funny. The ones that were my friends were like, oh my gosh, you're so much like Lulu. And I'm nothing like her. Like, she is so, like, I wish I was like her. She's so much stronger, and and super grounded. Like, she knows who she is, she's not trying to prove herself to anyone. She doesn't care what you think about her, she figures people out really quickly. Like, she's just a fun character. So she is, how old is she? She is a 30-year-old or 33-year-old hospice nurse from Honolulu. She's Japanese Hawaiian with a little bit German. So she's got little tiny freckles and green apple eyes and long black hair that's like a curtain around her face. So she's the kind of person that she doesn't stand out, doesn't wear much makeup. She doesn't adorn herself or wear flashy clothes. She doesn't really stand out, but then the more you look at her, the more you want to look at her. She's the person that just draws people in just with her presence. And after her daughter dies at 3 months of age. And her husband, 3 months later, cheats on her with her best friend. It sounds appalling, and yet her husband is not a horrible person. And I will say that you see that through the book, but they're both dealing with this loss, and they're both dealing with it in completely different ways. Lulu turns to ice and works all the time. Yeah. So anyway, so she, after this happens, she has nothing to live for. She's getting very depressed. And she decides that she's going to take a chance. And someone at the hospital where she works has been talking to a gentleman, this Italian-American New Yorker, who lives half the year in Honolulu. And his wife keeps going in and out of the hospital for various issues. And he's looking for someone to finally take over care of his father. in their Tuscan villa. And so his father keeps firing all these different nurses because one has man hands, one has nose hair. Like, he's a really hilarious old man. He wants a pretty woman to take care of him. He doesn't like the fat women in Tuscany with their pantyhose rubbing against each other with their legs. Like, he keeps firing these nurses. And his 4 sons are just throwing their hands up. They don't know what to do. And he refuses to die anywhere else. So he's got chronic pulmonary lung disease. And he's determined to be in the villa, the first villa he bought when he first started making money from his olive oil business. So she decides, F it, I'm going to move. Now, the book starts, though, with her there having a conversation with him, right? Because where do you start a story? That's another topic I love to talk about, because you can start a story in so many different ways, but you see her there in Tuscany. And so it goes between, just like the title, Between Thoughts of You, between her story and his story. And it's with conversations she's having with this very spunky Italian man who wakes up talking about the food he wants and wakes up talking about his dreams. And he is very triggered by Lulu because she looks a lot like the woman he has never forgotten. He fell madly in love with the daughter of a Japanese general when he, after the war, for 1 to 2 years, he was in charge of an internment camp in Northern California where this family was sent. And he had promised to marry her. Then he goes back to New York. Bada bing, bada bang. He starts making a lot of money. He hooked up with some people that he had met in Sicily. He's making a lot of money. And his mother wants him to marry a nice Italian girl from the neighborhood. No one's going to marry a Jap in his family, blah, 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 blah. And so he marries this other woman and starts his business, and he never mentions Kiyomi's name again. He sees Lulu and he can't stop thinking about her. He starts dreaming about her. He starts telling her about stories from the war and from that time in the camp. And it's really interesting, and then it triggers her to start thinking about Akani, her husband, their life together. It's when you're really mad at someone, especially if you've ever experienced a betrayal, it is so easy to make it black and white. That's the bad guy. I didn't do anything wrong. And 9 times out of 10, it's not like a person does something wrong who gets betrayed. Let's get this straight. You and I were talking about that before we started. Yeah. It's not that a woman or a man isn't attractive enough or, smart enough or fun enough. When someone chooses to betray, they're stepping outside of their light, right? And they're hurting someone else instead of doing the honorable thing and either going to therapy or saying this isn't working. We all understand that. But I guess what I wanted to portray with this is that what is love? And love can exist separately outside of the way people behave. The old man, Mr. Grasso, madly loved this woman. He loved her more than his wife, and he never stopped forgetting about her. Now, he still left her because he was into his greed. He was into his ego, wearing fancy suits, making money for the first time in his life, showing off, spending money, buying his parents a house. He was really into that. He was only 24 years old. It was like a big thing. And Lulu remembers the good in her husband, and it breaks her heart because she wants to hate him, right? And then entering a side sort of note of the book comes in Polly, the third son of the old man, who runs a restaurant called The French Whore in New York City. And he named it after his wife, who cheated on him with her yoga teacher. So I had to throw that in there because I'm also a yoga teacher. And, you meet some phonies in every walk of life. And Lulu helps Polly because he's never forgiven his ex-wife. And he falls madly in love with her. And she sees him as the New York playboy that he is, using women to get back at his ex-wife. And I won't give away the ending because the ending is not traditional. And once the old man dies, he has this very spiritual moment where he actually sees Kiyomi, and I just wanted to bring that in because I've had a near-death experience, and I just wanted to bring that in, of seeing loved ones. And then what's going to happen? Will Lulu go to New York with Polly? Will she go back to Honolulu? And then she also takes a trip to Tokyo and finds Kiyomi's daughter. She had been pregnant. So I'm not giving away the whole story, but it's just, there's all these different factors of love and what it means and how you can survive it. When you love someone so deeply that you feel like you can't live without them, how do you move on? So
That's really, it's so deep, first of all of those themes that you've woven into that story. But I think it's interesting, you and I were talking before too, that you said that most people, when they are betrayed, they look to themselves like, what did I do? Should I have lost 50 pounds? Should I have been a prettier person, a better person? And you were talking about how in those situations, it's
yeah,
almost never about you. It's about the other person and how they don't love themselves enough, or they let their ego get in the way. And just like in this story, how he let his ego get in the way and wanted to have the money and be the playboy around town and be the big shot, and couldn't be seen with the person that he truly loved because
yeah,
that would have been frowned upon
yeah.
by his family. And that really is ego. That is like ego and fear getting in. And I think that that plays a big part in a lot of people's relationships.
Oh, it's huge. It is absolutely huge. And um, and then also I sort of play it. So Lulu's was raised by her great nan, Lulu, the main character in Hawaii. She was raised by her great nan. Her mother left and went back to Japan. And, her nan is a healer of sort of like the ancient traditions. So we bring that in about how, you know, so many things are affecting us every day, our vibration. So that gets sprinkled into this book. And one of the things that Nan says to her is something that I really believe at one point in the book, where she's like, don't go looking for trouble. Like, Lulu is convinced, because her mother, when Lulu was a baby, her mother did kill herself. And her father was a pilot who was gone all the time. And so Lulu's always had this fear that she's never been enough. Someone is going to leave her again. And that she's not as saucy or as fun. Her best friend, it's like, I don't know if I'm a little like this. Like I can be kind of yin, and a lot of my friends are yang. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not as big of an extrovert as some of my friends. And it's just one of those things. And so Lulu's best friend from childhood is this very extroverted woman who's very sexy and saucy and drinks a lot. And in the back of her mind, she's always thought, oh, my, hot pro surfer husband is going to want her. And our thinking and our fear has a lot to do with what ultimately manifests, right, in our lives. And so, one could say, reading the book, well, did she manifest this with her thinking? Or, was Akani such an asshole? He's a really hot guy with his own business. Like, he has this Akani stores all across the islands and like in 2 states. And, and like, he could have had anyone. Why did he decide to, like, have an affair with his wife's best friend? Like, that was pretty, like, I don't know how anyone could forgive that, right? And so with all these flashbacks she has of memories, because they've known each other since they were 3, like her great nan and Connie's grandmother were best friends, and like all these different memories. And I think that's what, at least for me, is the hardest part of getting over betrayal, because you want to hate the other person. But when you do, it's a cancer, right? All that energy that we're bringing in of hating someone else. And then also that energy creates a vibration where you start attracting other people. See, all men are assholes. See, all men you can't trust, right? Like, you have to, it's like you heal yourself by forgiving. It's not saying what they did is okay. It's saying, I love myself enough that I'm going to drop it. I'm not going to carry around all this hatred anymore. You're not having any more of that energy. I'm not running any more of my headspace to you. But it's not something we can do intellectually either. You can't just say that, snap your fingers, and, oh, I'm over it. And so the process for Lulu, she had to keep busy taking care of this old man, Mr. Grasso, 24/7, was really a lot of work. She was very good at it, but she had to keep busy. And then when he would keep talking about how much he loved Kiyomi and yet he left her, of course it couldn't help but trigger her own stuff. And then Polly comes in, and he's a playboy, and he's really hurting a lot of women in New York because, A, he doesn't trust women. he's got that mindset, like he still misses, his wife, who he really loved. And so, how we deal with betrayal, I think, can be as dangerous or more so than the act of betrayal. It has a ripple effect on everyone in our lives, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So
I've read a study once where a physician equated unforgiveness with there was a correlation between that and cancer.
oh yeah, I believe that.
And I've seen it myself in clients that I've worked with and done healing with. A lot of the physical symptoms that they experience are directly related to energy blockages from things like not forgiving, not letting go, from emotions that they've held on to from childhood, even,
Oh yeah.
those fear of abandonment. That's a huge thing. A lot of kids, even if their parents didn't physically leave them, if they had parents who were too busy and
Oh yeah.
didn't have time for them, then you see those adults with issues like abandonment issues because they think like they're,
Yeah.
it ultimately, we put it on ourselves. Like, it's not our parents' fault that they were too busy. We weren't good enough for our parents to stop and pay attention to us, and that's what we kind of take on, I've noticed.
Oh, absolutely. And I teach kind of a restorative yoga classes and meditation, and I work with cancer patients at a hospital here in LA. And I had a dear friend in college who died of a rare form of breast cancer. And so when I say these things, it is in no way am I saying someone brought it onto themselves. That's the worst thing you can ever say to someone, especially like a parent whose child died of cancer. It's like, come on. And so I would never, ever say that. I do think there's an environmental collective that we are experiencing with how much mercury is in our fish. And, there's a lot of things where we have a lot of pollutants, right? There's a lot of different issues and a genetic component. I'm a daughter of a geneticist. So I try to be very compassionate. And as a yoga teacher, I am surrounded by people who really believe that people's thoughts created their cancer. And maybe all of it is true, right? To a certain degree. But I do see among friends and family those who are the most angry, who will never forgive, who aren't in the now. Constantly are bringing up things from the past as justifications for what's happening. Well, of course, I knew he'd do that. Oh yeah, of course he would. Oh, he's never picked them up on time. Oh, and all that stuff, um, and it doesn't serve your kids, and it doesn't serve their need to have a relationship with that spouse, your ex-spouse, their parent, and it just hurts you. And then of course, like, so I just, it was a journey for me of learning that. And this book, I mean, Lulu's so strong, she's never gotten there. Do you know what I mean? She's never been that vitriolic and bitter. And that's why I wanted to create that person, that culture, the Hawaiian who has, some family that have been in Hawaii forever, and part Japanese. And I wanted that culture, and to have her man be a healer, because even when you're surrounded by messages, let's say you've read A New Earth, you listen to, a lot of Wayne Dyer podcasts. Like, what if, you've got all of that under your, Louise Hay, you've read Heal Your Body, you have all that, but then your best friend betrays you and sleeps with your husband. Like, what do you do? That's a double whammy. What do you do? And your child dies. You start to lose your faith in God too. Like, what's going on? And so I wanted to have all these components, not so it's depressing. It's really quite uplifting towards but you get the journey to strength. Like, the strongest people I've ever met are not the ones that are the most physically strong. They're the ones that can breathe and that can pause, and I think that's, and just sort of surrender to the moment, and like, what is happening here, instead of like fighting against it. And so, like, the old man and Lulu and Akani to a certain degree, and his son, they all sort of really grow from this experience, like really grow exponentially. And it just mirrors all the different ways that we can grow, And that's why I wanted to write the book, because I grapple a lot with what is love. I've done the Course in Miracles of Marianne Williamson, and if only love is real and everything else is an illusion. Well, like Mark Twain said, it's a pretty powerful illusion, especially like we've got COVID, right? Right now, right? You may have, family members who are grappling with cancer. You may have a child who has a disorder. These are real. Maybe you've, as a woman, so many of us women, I think it's like 1 out of 3 will be attacked, or attempted, so we have these real issues that we're grappling with, and these are real and we have to deal with them. And yet when we try to come to some spiritual understanding that if only love is real and everything else is an illusion, what does that mean? And then if you're a yogi and you believe that everyone has a divine light linked to the divine, how do I think about that police officer that was on George Floyd's neck? How do I do that? How do I actually not think it's us versus them, right? Democrats versus Republican, whatever. How do we get back to that collective consciousness? And it starts with your inner circle, in my mind. It starts with your family. It starts with your friends. It starts with trying to understand that maybe they're not whole and they're outside of their intuition. They're behaving outside of their light. They've forgotten their connection. Maybe they're drinking a lot. Maybe they're hanging out with the wrong people. Maybe they're, it's like getting into their ego, and their fear can cause a whole ripple effect of behaviors. Now, those behaviors are real in the moment. If someone is threatening you, you need to get away, right? But when you can step back years later and think about it, that person was hurting. How do I forgive that person? Maybe they've gotten to AA. Maybe they've gotten sober. Maybe they're trying to make amends. And then can we be like, there's Nelson Mandelas in the world that can say, okay, I forgive you. You had stepped away from who you really are. Who you really are is based in love, right? And it's a hard concept to grasp for a lot of people.
Because I think there are certain people you will never get an apology from, and who will never see the error of their actions.
Right.
My ex was that way, and he passed away, and I never got he apologized once for things, but I never got the amends for all of the things that I had to put up with and go through with him. And I don't think that he actually, part of me feels like he didn't actually understand what he was doing, and then another part of me says yes, he did. So it's that grappling with it, and it's a difficult thing, but I think that in holding on to those kinds of things, you're hurting yourself. And in not forgiving someone else, it's not hurting the other person. It's hurting you, because you're the one carrying around that heavy emotional burden that comes with that situation. And when you can, and I read something else today that kind of jarred me a little bit. It said, when you hear spiritual people say you shouldn't get mad, spiritual people don't get mad. It's like, that's ridiculous. Like, everyone gets mad. That's an emotion that you feel. You have to feel your emotions. I think what we're trying to get to is a place where we feel it, acknowledge it, accept it, and are able to let it go. It's not staying in that place where we're holding on to that anger or that emotion and being able to move past that. But that's really, really hard when you're in the moment.
Yeah. And it's a messy process. People do chocolate.
Absolutely.
Have good days, bad days. And honestly, if you think about it, like, if you never get angry when someone mistreats you, it's almost like you're saying, oh, that's okay. Like that little girl or little boy who was mistreated by their parents. And so therefore, oh, everyone's supposed to mistreat me. That's okay. It's a very codependent, unloving way to be, to be like, oh, okay, no worries. I'm putting your needs way above mine. I understand that maybe you were mentally unstable, or maybe you came from a broken home and didn't know how to love me well. Oh, that's okay. No, it's okay to get angry, because I think that's, in my opinion, I'm not an expert, but that's the first step to say, no, I deserve better. I deserve better, right? And then you can get to the forgiveness later. And honestly, there are a lot of people that will never apologize in this world, in this lifetime. And I read somewhere, and I can't remember who actually said it, and I don't know if it was an Abraham thing or not, but it was just, behave as if they have. because the light in them, their higher self, if you believe in that, knows. On some level, they know. When they cross over, they know. And everyone in my life is a teacher, like my ex leaving taught me how to stand up for myself, taught me how to say no, because I suddenly had 2 kids and I'm Southern and I'm really good at volunteering and getting asked to do tons of things at schools. And I had to be like, no, I'm doing this all. I need to, and then how to just sort of juggle. And I'm not always graceful about it, and to prioritize my creative writing and my yoga. The old me, when I was married, would have felt like I had to beg and plead to spend money for yoga training or to work on a project where money wouldn't be coming in right away. Do you see what I mean? And then it was like, no, this is what I was born to do. This is what I need to do. This is what feeds my soul. And I'm going to find ways to do that. And so it sort of helped me step into my truth. I don't know if I would have written 3 novels, 2 novels since the divorce. I'm halfway through another one, so that's good. But do you know what I'm saying? It's like I can look back now, but I mean, it's been 11 years. That's a long time. So for me to smugly say I just got over it, that would be BS. Like it didn't happen right away.
No, and it's like layers of an onion where you feel like you peeled away a layer and you've forgiven one thing and then 5 others come back up again and you have to keep revisiting it. And that's okay. I mean, it's a process. But, one thing that I found that just recently works really well for me is to visualize the person in my head and try to connect to their higher self and say everything that I need to say and get
I
it.
love that. I do that too. Isn't that funny? I had a spiritual coach for 2 years and she taught me to do that too. And it's similar to like Marianne Williamson's Course in Miracles, where you envision them in a ball of light and you say, I forgive you, I send you the Holy Spirit. Even if you have to say it screaming, like, I'm sending you the effing Holy Spirit, like, whatever, you just keep saying it until you can drop it out of your head. It's kind of like a brain dump, like I do Kundalini yoga. Sometimes it's like, just get it out of my head. But that's a whole nother topic. But I loved this, like in the early days when I was really going through it, because divorce can be nasty, especially when you're whatever, right? So I would visualize my ex, like when I first met him, and I would visualize that person, and we would be in the mountains. That's where he lives, and I would just have a conversation with him, about thank you for being good to your boys, and act in the progressive present tense, like he's already doing the right things. Thank you for spending time with your boys. Thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for being kind to me in front of them and setting a good example. Thank you for, not drinking too much around the bottle. Like I would do these things. And I've shared it with a couple of my friends and, and everyone's on their own journey. So that's another thing that I try to do is just never, ever give flat out advice to anyone because their journey, because then it can make people feel bad. And honestly, like I had my days where I was curled up at the bottom of the shower, it's like, it's not a pretty journey, but I wouldn't be where I am now without it. Isn't that a miracle? It's interesting. And it sounds like you are on that journey yourself. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had written a book called Beautifully Broken, and it is my journey of how I survived divorce and single motherhood. And same thing, I have a lot of humor in that book where I talk about don't curl up on the couch with your carton of ice cream and, that kind of thing. But we've all had days where we've had to do that, where we just have to get through. And I think I agree with you in that I'm super glad that I went through it because it has taught me who I truly am. And I didn't know who I was before. So
that's
amazing.
beautiful. I love the title of your book too.
I was thinking of the imagery of like the Japanese pottery that when it breaks, they put it back together with gold paint. Yes.
I love that. And it becomes more valuable.
More beautiful than ever before. So that's what I was envisioning in that, because I feel like that is what a lot of people have to go through. And that is what our journey sometimes is about, is that we have to be broken open in order to be filled with light, to be put back together again, to then go out and be our highest version of ourselves. And I think a lot of people think that going through a spiritual awakening or enlightenment is like, oh, well, it's all sunshine and rainbows. And what they don't realize is it is like, they call it the dark night of the soul for a reason. It is a lot of pain.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. Yeah. And, I can laugh now, but, and then it also, when you say go through a spiritual enlightenment, I sometimes feel like, I mean, there are no gurus, you know what I mean? Not on planet Earth. And I feel, and I feel like, some days feel fabulous and I'm in that zone and I'm in that vibration and my thoughts are great, and then other days it's like, the house is a mess. Oh, I have a cereal. I don't have a dishwasher still. I'm getting angry about the dishes piling up and I'm trying to be like this Zen mom and be in the moment, but I've got a magazine article due and something else going on and I'm supposed to do a science project. And I'm just like, I can even hear the sound in the back of my head, like, oh, what the fuck? You don't always have these, it's not like every day is on the spiritual high ground. But I can have a sense of humor about it. And I know now, instead of to say, what the F, and throw something, I go into my room and I meditate until I feel better.
Right. This is a good time for me to step up, do something, clear my space. I had that moment the other day and I'm like, okay, I'm going to make some smudge spray because my environment there's some kind of energy hanging around that's funky and I'm feeling it. So I have to do that too. I have to do that a lot. I've had, the past week has been really busy. And so everyone thinks like, oh, because you have a podcast and you're doing all these things, like everything's always going really well for you. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. No, I go through it too. And I have to stop and regather myself too and do meditation and things like that. And it's an every day, it's a process. Just like, so I love that you talk about that in your book too, that just because you're surrounded by healers doesn't mean that your life's going to be, you're not always going to have all the answers,
And also what's interesting is that her Nan is kind of tough love, because she really, and I've experienced this with some of my friends in the yoga community, where if you really believe that we are, eternal beings having a physical experience, then when someone dies, I remember when my mom died, someone said, chin up, she's not gone, quote unquote, chin up, she's not gone. And it was just kind of like, but I'm grieving, leave me alone, like, because but I mean, yes, she had Alzheimer's, and for, years and years before she passed, I still couldn't pick up the phone and have that conversation with her. But, we have a process, and when someone, Lulu's daughter dies and she's haunted, like, if you breastfed, you have these moments, in like, if you breastfed in bed, especially, you have these moments where you're breastfeeding in bed and she can even smell the top of her head and the satin skin and all that, it's like her body starts having this contraction in her belly, because that's where her grief is. And I've felt that kind of grief before in the belly. Like sometimes our body will send us these sensations because we're internalizing and we just won't let ourselves, because her grandmother, or her Nan rather, would never, she frowned upon her crying. Like, it was like, child, she's not dead. Like, it's, move on. And but we still miss that. It's like when someone loses, a lover, and it's like, well, they're not here anymore. And I miss that. And now, of course, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of always thinking I miss them. Like, I highly recommend listening to Esther Hicks Abraham, of trying to reprogram the brain, of think about thoughts that make you happy, right? And so that you're not going down that rabbit hole, because that gets momentum where you'll end up on the couch with a bottle of bourbon and ice cream.
Exactly.
You don't want that. Go exercise, pump yourself up, surround yourself with beauty, and but there is a process to that. And some people in spiritual circles will I don't want to say shame and blame, but and also there's this idea that everything in your physical world is a manifestation of your thoughts. And to this, I have to say, if you've ever had a tragedy happen in your family, maybe a teenager who was killed by a drunk driver. And, there's tragedies in this world. And I sort of believe that our thoughts control so much. And yet there is the chaos principle, because I can control how I respond to you, Melissa. You like, and whether I respond, whether I react, but I can't control what you're going to do. They're like, just like I can't control you. And so trying to, I think that's why I say there's no gurus, because there's only experiences, and we can learn from them, and we can grow from them. And we can also be destroyed by them. And then of course the other aspect is PTSD, which I think we need to have a lot of compassion for, because women especially who've been attacked, or there'll be triggers in certain environments. And so we have to learn how to deal with lessening our triggers, right? Honoring ourselves, and even saying no to people. If going to certain bars or doing certain things gives you triggers, then you just don't do that anymore. It's like finding ways to not, you know what I mean? So if hanging out with that Uncle Bob who always drinks a ton of scotch and pinches your ass bothers you, you can say no and not hang out with him, like that. But I mean, that's kind of making it a little tongue in cheek, but you get the idea. I really believe that there are so many layers, and that there's not one answer for everything that we're feeling, and we're allowed to have our feelings, and to not punish ourselves because we're not perfect. The feelings for me are an indicator of where I am. Oh, that's interesting. Why am I so blue today? Oh, I didn't exercise for 2 days in a row, and I ate a lot of sugar. And maybe that's, you know what I mean? Or maybe, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I haven't been meditating. Like, I think that women especially have this perfectionist. Once we get on the spiritual path of, well, what happened when I stumbled? And it's like, well, we're human,
Having that self-compassion, and just knowing that it's okay to honor yourself and to honor your boundaries. I love that.
Yeah.
So this book sounds amazing. Where can people find it if they want to go out and purchase their own copy?
Oh, absolutely. So it's getting published next month. I don't have the exact date, because Simon & Schuster Ingram, there's just with COVID, there's some slowing down on the print press a little bit, but it is next month. And you can go to my website, Laura K. Roe, spelled like fish eggs, ROE. So laurakroe.com. And you'll see that it'll be at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And you can also pre-order from my website. And I wanted to just say, I also do yoga for writers retreats, because I found a lot of my journalist friends drink a lot of coffee and don't exercise and kind of get in their monkey mind. And we all don't want to end up like Hemingway, or some of the other writers that drink a ton and get really depressed, right? Or Hunter S. Thompson, right? So I am having a Maui retreat in September 21 with someone I adore named Heather Archer, who is an LA yoga teacher who just moved to Maui. And I'm giving away a spot in the retreat. So it's 6 days in Maui. It's yoga, it's writing, and adventures like hiking to waterfalls and stuff like that. So if you pre-order a book, you can win a spot that's worth like $2,000. And after COVID, I mean, I'm just dreaming of getting back to Maui. Like, I love the energy there. So I wanted to throw that out. That's, one way to sort of, even start dreaming about traveling again, right? Hopefully by next September.
I'm so hopeful. I'm ready to travel again. I have not been anywhere this year, and it's time. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. So I will also have, of course, her website link in the show notes, so you guys can go there and just click on it and go directly to her website. I want to thank you so much for being here with us. This was such a fun conversation. If you had any parting words of wisdom to give our listeners out there, what would that be?
That every time you get into fear and anxiety, to pause and take a deep breath, and just to know that fear is the opposite of love. And you hear people say, well, push through it, like put on your big girl panties and push through that fear. And I sometimes think that's not true. If you go down a dark alley and your spidey sense turns on, maybe you should listen to that intuition and not go down that alley, right? Don't push through your fear, But when we have fear, what I'm trying to do, and maybe this is my intention this week, when I get into fear, I want to pause and ask it what it's telling me. Is this old programming? Is this old stuff? And then do some deep breaths, like 3 to 5 really deep breaths to settle the energy, and move from there towards love. That's my intention.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you so much for being here with me. I can't wait until your book comes out. Thank you so much for sharing about it.
Thank
I hope
you
that
for
it is
having me.
Yes. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us today as well. As always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a positive review from wherever you're listening. You can leave me some stars on iTunes. That was super helpful. And also share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. If you want to follow me on social media, I go live Mondays at 6:30 Central Time on Facebook, where I do a free card reading. If you show up for the live, I will pull a card especially for you. I also have free guided meditations on my YouTube channel, so check that out. You can also work with me if you go to my website, melissaoatman.com. You will see all of the services I offer, and you can purchase a session directly from my website. I hope that you guys have a beautiful day from wherever you're listening. As always, I am sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.